Do you have trouble trusting people or often feel worthless or inadequate? Do you dread holidays and special occasions where parent steps and ex steps are all present? Do you struggle with anger or that feeling that things in your life can fall apart at any moment? Well, you're not alone. Divorce has become so common that over 50% of marriages are ending in divorce. The fact is, at least 50% of you listening are divorced, or your parents are, or both. Your parents may have gotten divorced when you were a child or after you became an adult, which has become even more common than earlier divorce, sticking it through for the kids and all. You probably know that their divorce had an impact on you, but are you aware of how much it impacted you? I'm not talking about the awkward family holidays and get togethers that everybody dreads after a divorce. The fact is, your parents' divorce may be undermining every relationship you have, and you may not even realize it's affecting you. Today, I'm talking with Kent Darcie, who spent the last 20 years working with adults who have divorced parents. Give our audience an idea of why people should listen to this episode and what they're going to get out of this conversation.
Brent, I was in denial for 30 years that my parents' divorce had actually impacted me. Not a big deal. Holidays are a hassle, but overall, I'm okay. And I learned that I was not okay, that in fact, it was still impacting me and in negative ways I couldn't have imagined.
If you're thinking your parents' divorce did not impact you because it happened later in life and you were an adult already, well, I got some news for you. Your parents' divorce still has an impact on your life. And this show is absolutely for you just as much as someone who had a divorce that happened with their parents when they were younger. Be sure to stick around for the episode. We're going to roll our sponsors, and we'll be right back with more from Kent Darcie. Gents, I sleep on my pillow. I sleep on my pillow Giza sheets. I have my pillow body pillows. I have my pillow cup towels and bath towels. My wife even wears my pillow slippers because they're awesome. I would never recommend a company to you that I don't use, and we're incredibly proud to have Mike Lindell and MyPillow as sponsors for this show. You can go to mypillow.com and use the promo code THRIVE. I know, super complicated, right? Thrive, driven to thrive, right? You get it. Thrive for up to 80% off your order and free shipping on orders over $75 always. Plus, they always have exciting promotions going on. Or call 1-800-794-5834 for up to 80% off your order. Just for our listeners, that's our private line with them. Mike Lindell offers these gracious discounts to our audience as sponsors for the show. And for every purchase you make, it supports not only an American company, but it helps us producing content for you and keep these shows coming. So thank you ahead of time for your support and enjoy your MyPillow products, guys. The Driven to Thrive broadcast, purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. Helping men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives. Welcome to the Driven to Thrive broadcast, purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. I'm your host, Brent Dallin, and we help men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives. Today, my special guest is Kent Darcie. Kent Darcie specializes in working with adults of divorced parents. Kent, welcome to the Driven to Thrive broadcast.
Well, thanks so much, Brent. It's great to be here with you this morning.
Now, Kent, we like to start pretty light here. So how's your trivia skills?
Well, it depends on the topic, but I'll give it a shot.
For full disclosure, I do actually go out of my way to try and find trivia that people are probably going to get wrong. So,
Oh, great. Okay. I do watch Jeopardy occasionally, so we'll see.
In what decade does the Netflix show Stranger Things take place? Is it the 70s, 80s, 90s, or 2000s?
2000s.
All right, guys, you know the rules. Don't cheat. Don't look it up. For goodness sake, if you're driving, please do not write down your answer. We'll come back to that later in the show. I don't do big introductions because it really doesn't encapsulate the now. So in your own words today, in this moment, who is Kent Darcie?
Kent is somebody who is a passion about helping people overcome the issues that I went through. Kent is somebody that when he hears that somebody has divorced parents, kind of goes, okay, I wonder, first of all, are they divorced themselves? Because there's almost a 50% shot they are. Do they really know what impacted them? Because they probably didn't. And is there a way I can help them to get it? because it's so important. And for men, it's even more important. But when I'm not doing that, I'm married, got 3 kids, 3 adult kids. I love listening to music. My wife loves to fish and has dragged me into that. I love the water, but now I like to fish. And I'm also a licensed counselor. So that's not my thing dealing with adults with divorced parents and the counseling side of it. I deal with everybody. But, basically, I'm at a point in my life now where I'm looking backwards and going, you know what? I want to take the wisdom that I've acquired through the fire and through everything and share it with others.
Kent, we don't do the big introductions. What do you do for a living?
Well, basically, I'm a licensed professional counselor in Southeast Michigan. I started it later in life. I got my master's, and because I really felt the Lord leading me to do that. But when I'm not doing that, I've been heading up adults with divorced parents ministries for 20 years, and basically that focuses just on adults with divorced parents.
Okay. Divorce rates are incredibly high, and we're seeing like this isn't just a US thing. For a long time, it was really bigger in the US in a lot of places, but this is actually becoming a very large global dynamic that's becoming a problem for a lot of countries. People aren't getting committed relationships, therefore, birth rates are dropping right now all over the world. What do you think is going on that is had such a massive impact on marriage? Marriage has been around, as long as we have history. Some kind of union, right, between man and woman has always been around.
Mhm.
What do you think has changed in our mindsets that this has become so commonplace?
Well, the stigma of not sticking it out has changed through the years, has watered down. Where before you would just do it because it was the thing to do, and now there isn't uh, that commitment that we're going to do it. The other issue is because of the stigma not being there anymore. Um, Probably the last 10 to 15 years, the number one reason for divorce was because I'm not getting my needs met. And prior to that, it was infidelity. That had been infidelity for years and years and years. So now, when you combine my needs not being met with the fact that now 70% of the divorces are filed by women, and you talked about the global issue of a divorce, basically, as westernization exports and the economic condition of women increases, the divorce rate increases. And that's around the globe: India, China, Africa, South America, wherever. So you have the combination of the stigma's gone, um, economic increase, the issue that we can just divorce if we want to, and probably the biggest issue is that we don't think it's a big deal. We don't realize the impact of it. Um, and that really is, and then from my perspective, the other reason why there's a couple. You have gender issues that we just don't understand that men and women are different, and they're not wired the same, and that's a huge issue. Um, it, we got guys listening. You want to really help yourself out? There's a book called For Men Only by Jeff Feldhahn. Great book. And basically it tells you what makes women tick. And it's fabulous stuff. Not a great book, not a huge book, and it comes as an audiobook. 'Cause I know a lot of you guys probably don't read. Men aren't big readers, but it also comes as an audiobook. And For Men Only. It is a great, great book. And I'm telling you, it'll change your perspective on your wife, your girlfriend, almost from page one. You'll be going, oh, that's why she responds that way. Oh, that's why she responds that way. But most people haven't read that book, and most people haven't read For Women Only, which is what makes men tick. Because most guys, if they're honest, know that we're clueless as to what makes women tick. But the women actually think that they've got us pegged, and they don't. And I have found that that book is very eye-opening for women. So we have the gender issues, we have the ease of divorce, and then, our topic today is that basically when our parents divorce, it kind of reprograms our brain. And a lot of the things that, if you go to a marriage retreat, they'll say, do these 5 things and this will strengthen your marriage. Those are the very things that adults with divorced parents struggle with. So it undermines their relationships and they collapse.
It's interesting you mentioned the socioeconomic change. Uh, and I think that's one of the transitions we haven't prepared. We talk a lot about masculinity on the show. It's one of those things we haven't caught up with teaching men yet, right? Because for the longest time, men's roles were defined by protect, provide, preside, right?
Mhm.
So to say. And so we are still using the same playbook to teach a man to be a husband that they were using 100 years ago. We haven't changed that as the socioeconomic standing of women has changed, as women have been able to take positions where they can support themselves.
Mhm.
Now there's a hole in divorce in relationships where women go, okay, well, I don't need you to provide for me, and I live in a fairly safe area, so I don't need you to protect me. So, I want these needs met. Whereas before it was like, well, I need the safety of this relationship. I need the security
Mhm.
of this relationship.
Yeah.
Now they're asking for more out of men, but we aren't teaching men that your role has grown. I don't want to say totally changed. I want to say grown to where now it's not enough to go to work and provide. It's not enough to make sure your family's safe. You have to actually deal with those feels and those emotions and that dynamic that we're still not teaching men about. So, thoughts
Yeah.
on that? Sorry, just it caught my attention.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. I One of the things I draw, um, when I'm dealing with guys is that women have to go full circle when they're communicating. And if you picture a clock and you start at 6 o'clock at the bottom and you go around to say 5:30 on the right side, if 5 is where the solution is, guys go from 6 to 5 as a straight line. We don't go around the circle.
Hmm.
We get enough information and we fix it. Ladies aren't wired that way. They have to go all the way around the clock. They have to talk through it and go all the way around to 5 o'clock. Now, here's the problem. If you're looking at that clock face, between 9 and 3, everything above that is emotion. And I call it the valley of the shadow of emotion. And the ladies have to go through that to get to the solution. In fact, and this is going to freak you guys out because it makes no sense to us, most ladies, the solution isn't even as important as the journey through the valley of the shadow of emotion to get to it, which for a guy makes absolutely no sense. But guess what? That's how they're wired. So when I deal with the ladies, I say, ladies, you got to make the circle smaller because the guys just can't hang in there through these big, long circles. Save those for your girlfriends. But guys, you have to hang in there with them. Where we filter out emotion to get to the solution, they go through the emotion to maybe get to the emotion. In fact, if you hang with her through that, she doesn't even really care about the solution that much. And that's one thing that they don't teach, but it's super important because it is light years different than how we as males think.
One of my favorite books is Men Are Waffles, Women Are Spaghetti. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like the first time I heard that as a keynote, actually, like my wife brought the CD back from a women's conference she heard it at,
Hmm.
and I was hooked. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this makes so much sense."
Yeah, yeah. And it's the way we are created. God created us male and female. And very often, what happens in our relationships is if she would just be more like me and get rid of this emotion stuff, we would all be better. And she's thinking if he would just be more communicative and if he would just feel more, we would all be better. And the reality of it is there's strengths and weaknesses to both. And God intended them to be together like hand in glove, not fist to fist, which is where we tend to park.
Now, guys, we're just getting warmed up here. Kent, is there anything that our audience needs to know about you before we jump into the rest of this today?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that. We are talking about a very sensitive subject, divorce. And I've been doing it for 20 plus years, helping adults with divorced parents. And one of the things that's really, really important to know is if you're divorced or your parents are divorced or your friends are divorced, we are not about throwing stones. I'm not about bashing divorced people. My parents were divorced, and I find I love them more. I mean, they both passed, but I love them more after I processed through this stuff than, when I had all that underlying resentment and bitterness and all that sort of stuff that was going on. So it's really, really important to understand. that this is not what it's about. Even if some of the things we say sound kind of like it, we're just saying it how it is. The other thing that's important to know is that I'm dealing in the center of the bell curve. Basically, the majority of people, there's going to be your outliers. There's going to be those families, there's couples that divorce, and you're like, they're so chummy, chummy. Why'd they even get divorced? It doesn't make any sense. And then you have the other end of the bell curve where it's just crazy. I mean, neglect and abuse and addiction and all that sort of stuff. And my ministry doesn't really deal with either of those ends. I deal with the vast majority of divorces, which is kind of what we've been talking about. Needs weren't met. Um, uh, things weren't quite clicking. Maybe there was an affair, but the vast majority of divorces are just, I don't say normal because they're not normal, but we're going to be dealing with the vast majority of divorce, the average divorce, if you will.
Guys, we've been just spending a little time getting to know Kent and a little just starting to wade into the subject. I brought Kent on to talk with you guys today because Kent can give you a perspective on this and insights on this that I can't do. And as we try and support you guys here at the Driven to Thrive broadcast, we want to bring you the best people we can to help you through every stage of your life and to help you level up your life. So, we're going to dive into the impact of uh, divorce of your parents, whether that's while you were a kid or whether that's as an adult. And Kent has some amazing insights to offer for us today. So, I highly encourage you to dig in because divorce has touched us all at some point. Now,
Or
Kent,
will.
yeah. Now, Kent, you postulate that your parents' divorce, whether that was as a child or as an adult, and we'll separate those out in a minute,
Right.
have some major negative impacting results in your life, that it actually starts to shape the way you view your own life, your own
Right.
marriage.
Hmm.
And I want to dig into, what that actually kind of manifests as,
Okay.
because I don't think we've gotten so comfortable with divorce, especially in the
Yep.
United States, that a lot of people don't give it a second thought, right? Most
Right.
people's arguments about divorce have to do with a religious background,
Right.
our belief system, but we've just gotten very comfortable with this idea of divorce. And so I don't
Mhm.
think a lot of people believe or even think consciously. It's like, wait, it makes holidays uncomfortable or more of a headache. I know
Mhm.
in-laws getting divorced, right? It splits our time when we go visit them.
Mhm.
They're fairly amiable. They just ignore each other for the most part and are polite. Right after it happened, it was not quite that easy.
Yeah.
Everything was much more complicated, but we tend to relegate it to there. So, what are some of the common ways that manifest in our adult lives?
Okay. Um, One of the big issues is, and it was my issue. My parents divorced when I was 13. So I was one of those that, we were young when our parents divorced. And if you'd asked me if it was any effect on me at all, I would have said no, not a big deal. I mean, like you said, the holidays are a hassle. My dad remarried twice. So, and you're talking almost 25 years, almost 25 years, almost 25 years before he passed. So there was a lot of overlap, which made it kind of crazy. And one of the issues I dealt with was, which is the number one issue, and that's unresolved anger. The first issue we deal with is that we were never able to really deal with our anger, and we are angry. And I'm going to focus on when adults, we were young, when our parents divorced, high school or younger. Basically, number one issue is anger, and there's just a couple. I mean, there's a number of reasons, but a couple of the ones is there's loss. We lose, as you had described. Suddenly Christmases are different, holidays are different, birthdays are different, and this whole thing of, "Well, now I get 2 birthdays," uh, it doesn't it's not as great as we think it is. Um, you lose whole sides of the family. Maybe you can't do sports anymore because you're in one place one week and you're in another place the other week, so you can't make the practices. You might lose your friends. Often when there's divorce, there's a loss in economic status. So we didn't have what we used to have. So we lose some of the stuff we used to have access to, and we get angry. Another reason we get angry is, I call it the loyalty challenge. Basically, which one do you love more, me or your mom, or you or your dad? Which one do you love more? And Some people actually come out and say it. I've had people say, "Yeah, my dad came in and said, 'You wanna live with me or live with mom?'" But others times, more often, it's more subtle. I remember I was leading worship at a church, and I would get there early. So at that point, my dad had come in and he was visit. My sister would come in from the other side of the coast, and everybody would come in. My dad, my mom would come in, and I got done with worship, went down to sit with my family. My dad and my stepmom are on one side of the pew. My mom and my sister on the other side of the pew. My wife and my kids are in the center. So where do I sit? Do I sit with my mom or do I sit with my dad? And the problem is let's transpose that. You're playing clarinet in the band and you get your, 9 years old and you're playing clarinet and you get done with your song and the teacher says, "Go sit with your parents." And your dad's sitting on one side of the auditorium with his girlfriend. Your mom's sitting on the other side of the auditorium. And you're thinking, well, I want to sit with my dad because I don't get to see him that much, but mom doesn't like the girlfriend. I don't really like her either, but I never get to see dad. But if I sit with my mom, then my dad's going to say he never gets to see me. And if I sit with my dad, then my mom's going to be upset that I sat with him. And this kid's 9 years old. And then the next day, he's in class and somebody takes his pencil or something and he goes whack and hits them. And the teacher goes, "Well, why'd you do that?" I said, "I don't know." And then this boy grows up and he still has anger issues. And it's politics or it's sports or his wife's always bugging him or whatever, kids are not behaving. But in reality, he still doesn't know why he's angry. And very often it has ties to the divorce. It is very, very frustrating. And for men, we talked about women's needs and all that sort of stuff. Anger is a huge problem in relationships. And anger is often the one thing that men express. He's always angry, he's always whatever, and all this. But actually, you know what? We'll do a quick detour real quick. Dealing with anger, Tom and Beverly Rogers created an acronym called GIFT, GIFT. Basically, if you're feeling upset or angry, instead of blaming it on the world and everything else, go, am I feeling guilty? Am I feeling inadequate or inferior? F, am I feeling fearful? Or T, is there some sort of trauma or triggers involved? And if you ask those questions, you're far more likely to not escalate because it becomes internal instead of external. Instead of blaming whoever, you're going, wait a minute, why am I responding this way? And it tends to keep the anger down. So anger is a big issue. There's fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of doom, and fear of doom is interesting. Fear of doom is waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under you at any minute. And as a result, you're always waiting for things to collapse. So even say the job's going good, wife's going good, the kids are behaving, got a raise, everything's great. If you're from an intact family, your anxiety goes down. But if you have divorced parents, what the research shows is that job's going good, wife's really great, kids are behaving, got a raise, your anxiety level goes up. And you go, well, why would it go up? And that's because you have more to lose. I mean, if it's all going to fall apart anyway, because that divorce announcement that came in, your whole world changed. And now you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And as a result, we don't relax and we tend to become control freaks, which is another thing that gets the ladies upset because we really believe if we can keep everything in control, then everything will be okay. But it just doesn't work. So the first couple of things are anger and fears. And fear, guess what, was on the gift exercise, and fear triggers anger. Inadequacy triggers anger. So again, a lot of the things that impact us as men, well, and women, when divorce happens are the very things that tend to undermine relationships. So that's the first couple of things.
You have to forgive me. I'm over here taking notes.
Well, there's three more, but I want to make sure you didn't want to jump in.
No, we're gonna get there. Let's go ahead and move through those before we move forward because
Okay.
right now we're talking about something very important because, like I said, a lot of guys don't understand that this has an impact on their lives.
Oh my goodness, yes, it is. I was in denial for 30 years. And basically, I was at a women's, not a women's, I was at a marriage retreat, and God basically said, "Ken, if you don't get your act together, you're on the same emotional path as your dad." And my dad was an adult child of divorce, from an adult child of divorce, from an adult child of divorce, and at that point, he had already divorced twice, was heading towards his 3rd marriage, and that just scared the death out of me. I just, because I love my wife, we've got 41 years under our belt now, and I didn't want a divorce. But now God's saying, if you don't take intentional steps to change, things are not heading on a great path, because I had huge anger issues. And guess what? Fearful, fear of abandonment, because we're insecure, and it just goes on and on and on. But another issue that is issue is trust. We have a really tough time trusting people. And what'll happen is we'll poke people with a stick to see if we can trust them. And we poke them with a stick, poke them with a stick, poke them with a stick, poke them with a stick. And then eventually they go, "This is ridiculous. I'm out of here." And we go, "See, I knew I couldn't trust them." It becomes a self-fulfilling thing. And, the ladies, you've got ladies out there that maybe their dad had an affair, or maybe he just left or whatever. And they're like, "I am never going to experience what my mom did, and she doesn't trust you." And there's an interesting thing with guys, that respect and trust for guys is synonymous. Even though technically it's not, we tend to equate the two. We say, "Well, if she doesn't trust me, she doesn't respect me, because if she respected me, she would trust me." Well, guess what? If she has divorced parents, she probably doesn't trust you, but it's not you. But if we internalize that and we say, "Oh my goodness, she doesn't trust, she doesn't respect me," then we get angry because she doesn't respect. Nobody talks to me like that, and we get angry, and guess what? The whole cycle starts all over again. So trust is an issue. Father hunger is a big issue. We are in a culture right now that says men are not necessary, and that is just not true. All the research shows it is the dad who gives the girl the femininity. It's the dad that shows whether she's actually, woman enough and all that sort of stuff. The research shows that when the divorce happens, the daughter takes the divorce egocentrically. Basically, she takes the blame for it. She wasn't pretty enough. She wasn't smart enough to keep the dad in the house. Now, we all know that doesn't make any sense, but that's how she filters it. The men have tremendous power. So it's really important that we deal with this father hunger, because in our lives, when we don't have that father image, basically the ladies have, with father hunger, the ladies have this question: Am I beautiful? Am I special? And basically, they need that answer from a loving dad. Guys have a different question: Do I have what it takes to be a man? And basically, in my day, we didn't have this 50-50 joint custody. I spent all my time with my mom. And I mean, my mom did an amazing job with an angry teenage boy and my 2 sisters. But half of the time now, even if you have 50-50 joint custody, half the time you're not with your dad. And sometimes, and again, when we started this program, I said, we're not bashing anybody. But one of the things marriage does is it kind of keeps checks and balances, opposites attract sort of thing. And it kind of keeps that in check. When the divorce happens, that's not in check anymore. And maybe dad has girlfriends coming and going. Maybe he's doing whatever. And the image of a father, the image of a dad, the image of a man tends to get marred if we're not careful. And we have no answer to what does it takes to be a man. So basically, we go to the streets, if you will. We go to television, we go to social media, we go to whatever. That's where we get our image of a man. When in reality, the best image is God says that we are his masterpiece, that we are his handiwork, that we are his workmanship, which means you are exactly the image that God wanted you. I mean, warts and all, there's things we need to change, but we don't need to be chasing after some hero or on TV or some social media person or a TikTok person, or in a lot of ways, the image that our wife is trying to make us. We need to simply be all we were created to be, that God created us to be. So father hunger is a big issue. And for those of faith, divorce distorts our image of God. Basically, we have scriptures that say, like, honor your father and your mother. Well, we may be in church thinking, well, that's fine for you to my left and you to my right, but honor my father, honor my mother. Are you kidding me? And we start to cherry pick which scriptures are true and which ones apply to us. And as a kid, and right now we're talking about when we were kids when our parents divorced. Basically, another problem we have with trust and distortion of God is, where was God during all this stuff? How, How did he allow this to happen? Now, the reality of it is he all gives us choice. But as a child, we don't always see it that way. So you have anger, you have fears, you have mistrust, you have distortion of the scriptures, you have father hunger. And as I had said earlier, those tend to be the very things that undermine healthy relationships.
Wow, there is so much to unpack there. That's why I wanted to keep going. It's like I don't want to interrupt this flow because there is so much information just in that last few minutes of that. Now, I want to pause for half a second on that because one of the things you said was, you dealt with denial for years and years and years.
Mhm. Yeah.
I really think so. We have this modern concept, right, of this really not of man up, right? And I talk about masculinity a lot on this channel,
Mhm.
and that's something that a lot of us heard growing up: man up, get over it, deal with it,
Right.
happens, life, right? There are men right now who are hearing this who are not in a place where they're ready to step out of that denial. They're going, yeah, yeah, yeah. My parents got divorced. That sucked. Whatever.
Mhm.
I moved on. I'm fine. It doesn't affect me.
That was me.
And you said that was you.
Yeah.
And part of the reason changes you made were because you had that face to face moment with God where it impacted you, and you're like, oh, I need to change,
Well, I love my wife. And
right?
guess what? It's like Dr. Phil says, how's it working for you? It's not. The anger and the denial and all that isn't working. So if you're listening to this, and it's not a coincidence that you're listening to this today, don't be like I was. Like I said, we got 41 years under our belt. I'll
Congratulations,
tell you,
a lot.
um, I, and 6 years before that, which is pretty common with adults with divorced parents, it takes them a while to commit. 6, 8, I've heard 10 years. It's pretty interesting, but my wife, I mean, she's not perfect, pretty close, but, I put her through a lot of stuff for years, and one of the things that I'm so thankful for is she didn't see a counselor. So glad. I know that sounds selfish, but back in the day, by today's standards, they would have told her to leave me because I was angry and, uh fearful. I had fear off the charts. I talked about the gift exercise, GIFT, fear, fear of inadequacy, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, and fear feeds anger. And anger is hugely destructive. And I'm thankful that the Lord hit me with a 2x4, but I'm hoping that this program will hit you with a 2x4. How is it working for you? What are you seeing in your girlfriend or your wife's eyes? And is it her fault? Because if she would just been there, done that. Not true. We are in control. We simply have to know what's really going on. And it is not a sign of weakness to go, you know what? You know what, Kent? Yeah. You know what? When dad left or I wanted to cry in my room for days. And of course I didn't do it, but I wanted to because it was horrible. I just, and I would go to the thing and they'd be there with their dads. And my dad was off with his girlfriend or with his wife or whatever. And you have any idea what it's like on the birthday when mom and dad won't even look at each other? Do you know what we had to go through when we got married? I couldn't even enjoy my marriage because I was so afraid that my dad, my mom, is that what you're saying right now? Good. Let it out because it's there. And we want it to come out in a setting like this or talk with somebody, talk with, a good solid friend, not a women basher, but a good solid friend or somebody, if you're a person of faith, somebody at the church, talk about it because it's there. And this whole thing, it reprograms our brain to what I described. You can't trust anybody. I don't make it. I'm inadequate. Anger is, going to be a problem. It reprograms our brain that we don't realize it until you listen to this and you're going, huh, um, yeah, 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 maybe this is me. In fact, you know what? Brent, can I read the questions on the back of my book?
Yep, go ahead.
Here. When we'll do a conference or something, we'll have the book there. I usually flip the book over and I have them read the back of this. On the back of the book, there's questions. It says, do you have trouble trusting people? Are you secretly fearful that whatever situation or relationship you're in will suddenly fall apart? Do you dread or hate Thanksgiving and Christmas? Do loved ones or friends say you have a problem with anger? Do you often feel worthless or inadequate? Is the real reason you decided to live together because you're afraid you can't do the marriage thing successfully? And when I see people reading that, you'll start to see the head go, uh-huh, yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. And when I just read that, some of you were going, ooh, that was really close to the mark. Ooh, whoa, that was close to the mark. And wait, you're saying that's tied to my parents' divorce? Probably. So the denial thing, that to those people who are like I was, well, man, I'm going to click out of this because this isn't really me. Guess what? The reason you want to click out of this is probably because it is you. So hang in there with us because we're going to give you the hope that things can change.
Now, Kim, before we start diving into how to shift from those gears, I wanted to jump in just for a moment because I had never heard the term gray divorce before.
Oh, yeah.
And like we said earlier, there are people who are like, well, yeah, it happened after I was an adult, right? Like in-laws, it happened after the kids were out.
Right.
And is it the same as far as the impacts, right? When your parents have a gray divorce when you were an adult or when they have a divorce as a kid, are we looking at the same kind of impact on our current lifestyle?
No. In fact, in some ways it's worse. In a number of ways it's worse. For one thing is, and you said you did youth and work with youth for years. Today is way different than when my parents got divorced. Right now, I mean, the youth pastor's on board, the guidance counselors at school are on board, the teachers are on board. Everybody knows that divorce affects kids. I mean, there's lots of books and all sort of stuff. When we're an adult, when our parents divorce, there's no support. What you do here is, well, they're an adult. I mean, they deserve to have a happy life. Aren't you happy for them? Or, well, you're not even living there. So what's the big deal? So there's no support. And guess what? You start examining, was my whole childhood a fake? And that's assuming they didn't tell you they stayed together because of you. You know, before you used to go to grandpa and grandma's house. Now you go to grandpa or grandma's house. How do you explain that to your kids? You haven't figured out yourself. We don't see our parents apart. We have this image of our parents together. And now there's a great quote. I can't remember the total quote, but basically she says it's in, there's a book called Home Will Never Be the Same Again. It's by Friedenberg and Hughes, and it's a great book on gray divorce, probably an audiobook too. But they talk about how this one woman's complaint, she goes, man, my dad is calling me and my mom is calling me and I'm trying to work and they're complaining about the other and all this sort of stuff. And my mom keeps inviting me to go out with her boyfriend. That's what she calls him, her boyfriend. I mean, that's crazy. Isn't there a different name for that or something? And the reality of it is it that the parent doesn't love the kid? No. Is it that the kid doesn't love the parent? No. They're just clueless. And that brings us to another problem with gray divorce, and that's TMI, too much information. When we're a kid, good parents kind of shield them from the gruesome details. I mean, they're not going to get into all that stuff. When we're an adult, I don't want to know that, you haven't been satisfied for 20 years and all this sort of stuff. And man, I mean, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear this stuff. I mean, and yet they will treat you as friends, which brings us, we talked about the loyalty challenge and anger, when they had divorced when we're kids. It's worse when we're adults because now you're old enough to understand why the other parent is a deadbeat, why I'm not happy. They don't treat you as a child, they treat you as an adult. And it creates a huge problem. Another issue that we deal with is doubt. If mom can deal with that all these years, if dad can deal with that all these years, with our problems, we can hang in there. But when that marriage goes down after 35, 40, 45, 52 years, you have this voice that says, well, if they couldn't make it after all that time, how on earth are you going to make it with all your problems? And you have these cracks of doubt. And again, for those of faith, Satan comes in and basically feeds that. Look at all the problems you've got. You're not, and they were in the church. So obviously God doesn't work. And he creates this doubt thing. And, we talked about distortion of God, with children of divorce. Well, it's the same thing with when our parents divorce as adulthood. Well, where was God when all this was going on? But we have to be very careful of that because God gives us choices. I mean, one of the things I deal with is I'll talk about the choice thing, and I'll go to the first story in the Bible is Adam and Eve. Everybody's pretty familiar with Adam and Eve, and basically they had a choice. They could do things God's way, or they could do things their own way. And they chose to do things their own way, and we've been dealing with the consequences ever since. Well, our parents had a choice. They could do things God's way or the healthy way, or they could do things their own way. And one or both of them chose to do it their own way. And we have been dealing with the consequences ever since. But it's not that God isn't trustworthy or that he doesn't love us. It's that he allows us to make a choice. And whether your parents divorced when you were a kid or whether you're experiencing it as an adult, now you have a choice. And that choice is, am I going to click the button and go, yeah, well, that was interesting. Maybe somebody can get something out of that. Or are you going to go, you know what? My wife's been saying this for years, and I never really listened to her, which my wife said for years, and I never listened to her. Um, um, maybe there's something to what this guy's saying. And you know what? I think maybe I'm going to take some intentional steps to change because I love my wife. I really do. I love my girlfriend. And when she has that look of pain in her eyes, it cuts me to the center, but I don't know what to do. So anger comes out and it just makes it worse. And I feel like I'm in this cycle. I'm out of control. But now maybe there's something to what you're saying. So I'm going to, yeah, you know what? I'm going to run with this.
Normally, I talk a whole lot more, but you are sharing into things that your expertise is so far beyond mine in this, and so I'm grateful for what you're sharing because there's no way that I could talk about this or share this as effectively as you are. Now, guys, we've been talking about the impact of your parents' divorce and whether that's as an adult or as a child, and the way that has possibly or likely been affecting your life, even if you did not realize it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Until now, no one has probably actually told you exactly how much of an impact that had on your life. You were forced to adapt. You were forced to accept, whether you wanted to or not, that this was just your new reality, that this is just what your life looked like, that now you had two homes, or now your parents are living separate lives,
Or
right? The grandma or grandpa's house, instead of going to
Mhm.
grandma and grandpa's, like going to one or the other, definitely rung bells in our family. And you weren't given an option on this, which definitely made you feel powerless,
And we hate that.
impacted you in that way as well. So you may have never thought of this before, and it may be a whole lot to process in one show. But now you have an awareness, and you're going to have to choose whether you actually pursue that and explore that possibility. But we're going to shift gears into, and Kent's going to help us with some steps on how to move forward from this point. If you've heard this, if it's ringing true for you, if you're just going, wait, this actually may be an issue in my life I didn't even realize existed, we're going to start moving forward with some positive directional steps you can take to deal with those issues, deal with issues you didn't realize you might have even actually had. I know that's a huge surprise for a lot of people because we just live in the society. I was like, get over it, move forward, do what you got to do, yo. Right? We're so programmed to just put our head up and keep grinding and be like, yeah, whatever. And as men, we're so programmed to ignore the emotional side of it and just like head down, move forward. This is what I got to do now. It doesn't matter. And so I encourage you, like, sit with this idea for a few minutes, share this with a friend you know, because I guarantee if nothing else, you heard this today, your brain went, oh my God, this is my friend Bob.
Mhm.
I know this,
Mhm.
and I know a couple of these people. Share this with them, even if you don't think this is necessarily you, but sit with this idea for a few minutes and then shift into this next few minutes with us as we talk about what you can do in your life to move past that and actually process this, whether you realized it was there or not. Gentlemen, if your relationships are not where you want them to be, I want you to know I got you. Relationships take a lot of work and they can fall on the back burner pretty easily as your empire building in your life and trying to provide for your family. Men actually often suffer from damage to their relationships while they're out trying to provide and build that comfortable life because you're doing it because you love them and you want to support them, but they often just kind of fall to the background because we are so busy. Well, I help men with skills, tips, and techniques to rebuild thriving relationships with people they love, even if they've struggled with being the husband and father that they want to be in the past. Reach out for your free discovery call at purposedrivenmen.com to learn the skills you need to connect deeply with the people who matter the most. Let's get back to this show. Now, Kent, that's the direction I want to go from here is
Mhm.
how can our listeners go, oh wow, this hit me. So where do we start moving forward from here?
Okay. The first thing is what you just said. We move to the next step. We don't go, "Oh, that was nice," or whatever. We move to the next step. I wanna encourage everybody that's listening, particularly those of you with divorced parents, that you are not alone, and what you are experiencing is not weird. I talk to people all the time, and they'll share, "Oh, man, I did this, and then they did this, and I did this, and whatever," and I'll go, "That's pretty normal." "Really?" "Yeah, I hear that a lot." Because we think even though we hear, divorce is 50% and all this sort of stuff, which is a little bit high, but there's a lot of divorce, we it's like a snowflake. They're all individual, but you're not alone. There's millions of us out there that have divorced parents and don't realize this is going on. So the first thing you wanna do is, A, acknowledge that it's probably affecting you, highly likely. Second thing is go to good resources. My website, hope, the number 4, adp.com, hope4adp.com. Tons of resources on it. And I like to say it's not the Kent Darcie show. I mean, the blogs and the podcasts are mine, but I have a whole resource section that has the best resources that are available out there right now that deal with adults with divorced parents. And if you're not a book person, a lot of these are on audiobooks. And interestingly enough, the first 10 podcasts are programs that I recorded for an organization called Transworld Radio. They have an international ministry for men and they're on the it's an overview of the major issues that impact adults with divorced parents. So, and they're only 15 minutes. So I would encourage you to go through those. But check out the resources that are available. If you were a child when your parents divorced, look at those resources. If you were an adult, like I said, home will never be the same again is the best book I've seen out there um, for a gray divorce. So that's really important. The second thing
And
is,
wait, can I interject here for a minute?
sure, absolutely.
It occurred to me as you started talking. There are a lot of guys who this isn't some like psychological guys. We're not sending you to saying you need to be in therapy the rest of your life.
No.
But let me give you a prime example here. If you've been on the show, you might have heard me mention it before, but I eat Hellman's mayonnaise, right? If I go to the grocery store, I buy Hellman's mayonnaise. I don't know that Hellman's mayonnaise is the best mayonnaise in the world. However, it's what my mom bought, it's what my grandmother bought, and it's what I ate on every sandwich in the entirety of my life. It is the only reason I buy Hellman's mayonnaise is because that's what mom bought, that's what granny bought, that's what I should buy because obviously that's the best, right? We don't often correlate the impact of small things like that in our lives,
Mhm.
much less if something that small can be impacted by the people behind you, right? Your parents, your grandparents. How much more is your life now impacted on big things? So please dial in. I know a lot of us want to go, we're fine. We're fine. That is our go to. I'm fine. I eat Hellman's mayonnaise, y'all. And it all has to do with choices I never made. And this is so much more significant than that. Sorry, it jumped in my brain.
No, no problem. And it's kind of funny because the first the title of the first chapter, and the book is basically a devotional. The Choose a Better Path is overcoming the impact of your parents' divorce is basically a devotional. So guys, it's not a you got to read through this book. They're basically 1-2 page things with that kind of introduce you to the possible issues that you may be impacting. And the first chapter is I'm probably not fine. So learn about boundaries. One of the issues that we deal with is that when you have in-laws and exes and missteps and steps and step siblings and all this sort of stuff is you have issues with boundaries. Learn about those. So work through the issues. Find out what the issues are and how it's impacting you. Work through them. And I know we're all lone rangers on this sort of thing, but I have to come up with a more modern cliche. I guess. I mean, I'm the John Wayne Lone Ranger, James Bond. I don't even know who today. What, The Rock? Who's today?
I'm gonna be. I can tell this is.
Yeah, I have to
I'm the
figure
John.
out.
That's what I grew up looking up.
There you go. I have to upgrade all my cliches. But anyway, we tend to do things alone as guys. We're not big on connecting with other people. I would encourage you to connect. You have a girlfriend or a wife. If you say, listen to the book or you listen to the podcast and go, do you think that this is affecting me? You will connect with your wife in a way that is so deep. You will see her light up because you're actually sharing a part of yourself with her. And you will see the whole dynamic change. It's really cool. It's a little bit scary because we're not used to sharing anything. But one of the things that is really important is it's really tough to do alone. Going through this thing. Now, if you have a guy friend that you go to grab a beer with or go for coffee with or whatever, play whatever with, just go, I was listening to this podcast about my parents' divorce, and I had no idea that it was affecting me. Your parents are divorced? Yeah. Well, my parents are divorced too. Really? Bingo. Now, you've got a 50-50 shot that the person you're talking to has divorced parents. So now guess what? You have something in common. Well, I was like, 17 and my dad just left and my mom just decided one day she wouldn't want to be a mom anymore and she left and whatever. Guess what? Now you're talking. But instead of just ragging on whatever, you now have tools that you can talk about and bring about the healing. So you want to make sure, find out what's going on, work through what's going on, and then apply what you've learned. Get with other guys. Half of everybody you know has divorced parents, whether you're in the church, out of the church, half of everybody you know at the bowling league, at your restaurant, at your workplace, at your church have divorced parents. So you are not alone and you're not an oddity. But guess what? There's strength in numbers and you can help improve things just with that. Now, if you have gray divorce, that gets weird. If you're an adult when your parents divorce, you're going through that, you're going to have to really go with resources because unfortunately the likelihood of you finding an empathetic ear is not great. People don't understand how traumatic it is when our parents divorce after 35, 40 years. They're just clueless and they will say things that just don't help. So you kind of have to be careful with that. You might want to go to the book and that'll give you some help with that. But don't do nothing. Take what we've learned. Listen to this program again because we went through a lot of information today. Listen to it again. Listen to, I talked about the podcast. Listen to them with your wife. My wife was way ahead of me on this thing. She can make the connections. I talk about boundaries. My parents overlapped. So at Christmas time, my dad and my stepmom would come in. And then they would leave. And then my stepmom number one would come. My dad's step number two would come in. Then stepmom number one would come in. You couldn't make sure they weren't there at the same time. And then they would leave. And then my mom and my sister would come in. And it was Christmas was crazy. Couldn't wait for it to be over. Am I resonating with anybody out there? For those of you of faith, it is amazing that we actually dread the season of our Savior's birth. Think about it. That's how much this parental divorce can impact us. And we need to bring that back. We need to get back the hope that is offered at that time of the year, but this can mess with it. So we want to make sure that we are connecting with somebody. And like I said, with gray divorce, that can be challenging, but don't give up. Guys don't give up. I love it. I love this as a men's program because we press through. We do push through on this. Don't give up on this because it is important not only for you, not only for your wife, but for your kids, because they need a husband, a father, and a mother who love each other. Because if they're like my kids, we were the only family of their circle group that were an intact family. All of their friends had divorced parents. And I just encourage you to not add to that.
Guys, I want to interject my 2 cents from the perspective of I have my in-laws divorced after their youngest son left the house. And so I have now been through watching this firsthand with their 4 children. My wife and her siblings, I've watched the impact of this. And so from a parental perspective, if you have kids and this is happening in your life, right? If this is your parents and you have kids now, right? It is okay to protect your kids from this situation. We got a lot of grief from both sides of the family as my in-laws moved into other relationships. My father-in-law has been living with his girlfriend for several years now. My mother-in-law has gotten remarried. For a long time, they were not allowed to bring those people around my house because my kids were very young when they got divorced and did not understand why they didn't get to see both grandparents at the same time. They certainly were not ready to understand why they've got new people with them and that those people are now a part of their lives. And I was also protecting is like, are they going to be around to be a part of their lives, or is this a temporary thing, right? So if you are experiencing this in your life and you have your own kids, it is okay, even when other people yell at you about it, because like we got grief from our siblings about not allowing these new people access to my kids.
Mhm.
And my wife and I were like, no, has to be solid. We're not putting people temporarily into our kids' lives as part of their grandparents' circle. That's not okay. We had so much pushback from my wife's siblings on that fact that we would not let these people around. Now, it's been several years. Like I said, my mother-in-law is remarried. My father-in-law has been with his girlfriend longer than my mother-in-law's been married. So they are now a part of our lives, but we waited till the kids were a little bit older before we started explaining this and before we allow these people anywhere near my children. Because it is up to you to protect that next generation from this fallout, which is going to add to your struggle as the child of this great divorce. It's going to add even more pressure and stress than just your parents getting divorced. It's going to add pressure because now you have to protect your children. And so it is not only okay, it is right for you to protect your children from this.
Yeah, boundaries are super, super important. Establishing there's some videos on the website that deal with boundaries because, and with great divorce, it's just huge because anyway, because we don't have time for all that. But the boundaries issue is they're not allowed to badmouth the other person around the kids. That's a rule. And guess what? If you do, then you won't be allowed at the next function or whatever. And you need to do boundaries in a certain way. And you can't do effective boundaries unless you've worked through all the stuff, or else you're doing boundaries in anger, and those never work. It's kind of like, when a kid's in the back seat and they're carrying on, I don't want anybody to touch anybody for the rest of their lives. That's a boundary. Doesn't work real well, but it's a boundary. And we can kind of do the same thing with our parents if we're not careful. So we want to work through all of our issues so we can do healthy boundaries that are carry the basic characteristics of boundaries that stick and work. But, as you experience, Brent, there'll be pushback. And that doesn't mean the boundary's bad. It probably means the boundary is right. It's working.
Kent, you wrote a whole book on this, so go ahead and share your book. Tell us what that is, because you have. I generally do not let guests share a book I haven't read. Guys, full disclosure, I have not read his book yet. But based on our conversation today, we're still going to plug the book because while I haven't read it, just based on what Kent has shared with us today in this conversation. I think this will be a great resource if this is the situation you're in. And so I want to go ahead and share his book with you. So, Kent, please share your book.
I appreciate that, Brent. Basically, the book is a devotional. It's available as an ebook and an audiobook also on the website. But and like I said, it's a devotional. Basically means it's a page and a half, and it covers a basic issue. It covers forgiveness. It covers anger. There's a chapter on boundaries, on grief. There's loss. One of the things that's interesting about gray divorce and the difference in gray divorce and divorce in our childhood is when you in with childhood, you grieve what could have been. You think, "Oh, we could have done this, we could have done that if only they'd stayed together." With gray divorce, you grieve what should have been. We already had it. We've been going to the cottage since I was 5. Every year we go to the cottage. Every year we do this sort of thing. We already have our cousins and whatever, and then boom, it's done. What do you mean you're getting divorced? We just celebrated their 35th anniversary 2 years ago. I mean, you grieve what should have. So there's grieving, forgiveness, which is a huge deal, father hunger, and also there's a chapter on hope and triggers, because you watch a movie and there'll be some flippant thing about divorce or somebody leaving somebody and you get angry. Probably not because of the movie, probably because of what you experienced. So the book basically walks you through. It's not an in-depth book per se. It basically introduces people to the issues that are probably impacting them. And then once you're through that, you can go to the deeper resources that I have available on the website.
What's the book called?
It's called Choose a Better Path: Overcoming the Impact of Your Parents' Divorce. It is available on the website. We had it on Amazon and that got messed up somehow. But and we're trying to get it back on Amazon. But it's available on the website. And actually, the next book, we're waiting on that right now, and that is Preparing to Say I Do When Parents Said I Don't. The premarital guide for adults with divorced parents. Basically, is for marriage and remarriage, because it's very common that probably half of you listening have divorced parents, and it's a pretty good shot that half of you of them have divorced already and don't know why, or thought you knew why, but now you're learning something different. So we want to do it right the first time or that next time, and that's the next book that's coming out, hopefully later this fall.
I want a copy of that. I know a lot of people who need that book. Like, honest to God, as I used to do marriage counseling.
Oh, okay.
I've married several young couples, and I've done marriage counseling, and I have a marriage counseling book I like to use called Before You Say I Do.
Oh, yeah.
Workbook, right?
Yeah.
I
Good
absolutely
stuff.
love it. It's been my go-to for years.
Mhm.
It's just a really great resource, but one that specifically will dive into the fallout from living with parents with divorce and what that's caused in your life
Mhm.
is so necessary. So I'm so glad you're working on that book. I think
Yeah, we're just waiting for that. Yeah, and one thing, um and the train just derailed. Seemed important at the time. The train is now in a heap of cars. Oh, well, couldn't have been too important.
you're working on another book.
Oh, I know what it was. I'm sorry. If you're listening to this program, this show today, and you don't have divorced parents, but your wife does, it is really important to introduce her to this information. Probably dealing with father hunger, probably dealing with mistrust, probably has some anger issues, probably feeling inadequate, may have that fear of abandonment, all the stuff that we talked about. She probably has it. And you have an excellent opportunity to be her champion, to be her support in this issue, which she's probably oblivious to how it's actually impacting her.
Kent, you've got the other book in process. What else are you working on?
Well, the other that book is actually not the book I intended to write. That book just got kind of went here, boom, and we wrote the book. But the next book after that I'm looking at is called The Event Guide for Adults with Divorced Parents, and basically it'll do with weddings, graduations, funerals, birth announcements, just all those sort of things that can be a mess. I mean, the bulk of the book will be on weddings and funerals because those are just if you don't be proactive going into those events, they can just be a problem, and particularly funerals. I mean, weddings are a challenge, but particularly funerals because of all the emotion and all that. When my mom died, we were my dad was very involved with us as adults and did hospice and all sort of stuff. And he came to the funeral. It was natural because we were tied. However, my mom never would have wanted him at that funeral. And one of the things that happened is I remember we were walking down the aisle, because the service was starting. We walked down the aisle, and I remember having him, he was behind me, and have him sitting one row behind us. And that was not planned, but he was not family for my mom. And those are the sort of things that you want to talk about in advance. Because one of the issues with divorce is siblings aren't even always on the same page, as you had mentioned. And there's just a lot of craziness going on. So it's really good to plan into that. And the boundaries things comes in. When you do the birth announcement, are you going to do 2? Because she's not going to come if he's there. He's not going to come if she's there, and all this craziness. You establish boundaries and all that. And that's the next book after the premarital counseling one would be the event guide for adults with divorced parents.
Now, guys, we'll have all of Kent's connections, his links down in the show notes, the YouTube description, whatever platform you're joining us on. Please, 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 if you're listening to this going, oh my God, that's so-and-so, please share this show with them. Kent has shared such amazing insights on this with us today that I know no one actually cares about what decade Stranger Things takes place in.
The
early 2000s. It's actually the 1980s.
Was it really?
Yeah. It's when the series takes place.
When it takes place.
83.
Oh, when it takes place. Okay, missed it. Yeah. I was thinking it was out. Yeah.
But no one actually cares anymore, I'm pretty sure. But, for all the... I get in trouble when I don't actually answer the trivia question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody's waiting for it.
I did it one time. It's one of the only times I ever like nasty messages on my shows, which just cracks me up if you're still interested in that at the end of the podcast. But Kent, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. If the guys heard nothing else today, like I said, I do have some women and ladies. I love you. Thank you for the ladies who listen. I have about 14% of my listeners, I think, are women. The rest of them are all men. If they heard nothing else out of this entire conversation, what do you want to leave them with?
Don't be in denial, and there's hope for change. I mean, if God can change me, and I was a rough character, I just denial, but anger. And through a series of events, God changed my heart. And I am so thankful. We did a marriage renewal for our 30th anniversary. And the first go around was interesting. So I wanted to make sure that this time I did it right, if you will. And I'm so thankful that God opened my eyes to what really was going on, the truth of what was really going on with our parents' divorce, so that I could not only heal, but I could help others heal as well.
Guys, for myself, for Kent, be better tomorrow because of what you do today, and we'll see you on the next one. The Driven to Thrive broadcast, purpose, growth, and lasting impact for men. Helping men go from living to thriving, purpose-filled, intentional lives.